Hello. So I'm Ian, and today we'll talk about building a local cloud for Africa. So um, it should really be the same as building a cloud anywhere, right? I mean, all you need is a few wires from one data center to the other, and a few smart people, and yeah, everything works, right? Maybe not. So I'll just tell a story about my experience as a developer. Um, I love to code. I think all developers love to code, right? Right? Is that my assumption? Or so beginner developers are having to learn DevOps. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I really don't think they should do this. But we'll see. And of course, DevOps is getting very complicated every day. Kubernetes, Docker, Go itself, I mean, yeah, it's not really DevOps, but it's something that I have to learn, then I have to put in production, right? So I really like this quote by Kelsey Hightower. Here's my application, run it for me when and where I want it. That's the end game. And the talk will really be about this, but it'll be an African story, or challenges that we've had trying to create this. So the first, and I think the biggest challenge is, of course, access to local infrastructure. So how many cloud providers do you know of? I mean, 3, 4, 10? Do you know any in Africa? Google? Yeah, I mean AWS, yeah. Yeah, AWS are in South Africa. But not everywhere. You don't really hear of a cloud provider in Kenya or a cloud provider in Nigeria. I mean, they're there, yes, they try. But I think they're really too far behind from what AWS and Google are doing in the US or Europe. So we're trying to build an open platform that is really simple, reliable, and local. And of course, it looks so easy because I just threw some few words on a slide, and it looks easy, right? But it's really difficult, of course. That goes without saying. But we'll still try to do it. So we're creating an open platform for learning. We're not trying to create a platform that's going to be used by the big companies to run their applications reliably. We're just creating a platform that's going to be used by the small developer to learn. But of course, without a readily available local cloud, how can you create such a platform? So we'll have to get a few servers, throw a few servers in a data center somewhere, then try to build this abstraction. So what experience do we really want to create? So we've all used Heroku, I think. Maybe not. So what's Heroku like? Who can describe Heroku? So I guess it's a CLI, right? And it's a really cool CLI, simple to use, very well documented. What if I told you that the CLI can't really work from where I come from? Would you believe me? I mean, it'll work, of course you can, it'll work, yes, but then will it work for the average developer? Maybe not, maybe. So something like this, hestia deploy app.yaml. I don't know if this makes sense, but app.yaml is supposed to be this application. Let's just call it a YAML. I mean, it's just a YAML file that defines some application. We'll explain this later. So you can create an application, or you can deploy an application. I think create would have been better, but it's just a placeholder. Or you can also list applications. So it's a really simple to use CLI. And maybe this is what the YAML file looks like. Well, I have a very simple name and some image somewhere. There's some size. I'm saying it's huge. And there's a subdomain where it's like, oh, fruit demo. It has no dependency, maybe. And there's no registry credential, sorry. So of course here I'm making a few assumptions. I'm making an assumption that it's a container abstraction, right? That I'm building some sort of platform as a service where a developer can define a container in a YAML that can be pulled, which could also work. And I'm also making the assumption that they will use a CLI to deploy the application. Maybe this is one of the ways. But then, is it the right way? So I think that has too much magic. I think that it's too difficult for the average developer. And I think that's a big problem. So I've worked in developer outreach for about 3 years, and I've interacted with many developers. And most of the developers do not really know how to use Git. And I mean, they're just learning to code, right? But they want to learn, and they want to grow faster. So should you really throw them this complexity? Git, Docker, or Kubernetes? Is it really what they need? And then, of course, they have to upload some code to a repository. They have to package it, upload it. Again, the same container abstraction. But then as you've seen, even if you don't have a container and you're using Git, that could still be a problem. So they could upload a zip file, of course. And maybe an online editor. And they could also, this could also work really well. So as you can see, I'm just throwing a bunch of questions out there. But then, of course, you've all made very good assumptions that a PAAS should be a fancy CLI. A PAAS should be maybe a container as a service. Build an image, put it somewhere, then deploy the image from wherever you are. But maybe that doesn't work for everyone. So we're trying to build an open platform for the beginner developer, for the learner. And our goal here is to help them write code faster and just focus on what really matters, writing code. So let me tell the story. So assuming we have this service called Poseidon, I just picked a random name. I think it's a cool name. So Poseidon is supposed to be a Kubernetes frontend, and you will create resources in Kubernetes, and you've already built an abstraction, because we'll look at this and how this is being consumed. And Poseidon will be a service that sits somewhere that could possibly receive a request from a user in a simple definition and create resources in Kubernetes. And you could use something like client Go to define this abstraction and make things easy. And then, of course, you'd have to worry about authentication, resource limiting, and ease of configuration for the developer. And of course, you could use a service like this imaginary service we created Poseidon to define all this. But is that really it? Like, is it really that simple? Of course, after Charity's talk in the morning, it's not really answered our question. So maybe a developer can create an application, maybe a developer can launch an application and have it running somewhere in some part of the world. But then we've asked ourselves, what's the right abstraction for this beginner developer? And I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but I think it's not so easy. It's a big challenge, and I'm trying to find an easier way to help developers learn faster. I've seen this as a big problem, and I'm trying to really understand what is a really good abstraction for the beginner developer. And I think that if we can get more developers to write code and learn how to write code, especially in Africa, we can solve really interesting problems. So that's a big challenge. If you have any ideas, I'd love to listen to what you have to say. So of course, let's go on with the story. If I want monitoring, I could just rely on Kubernetes and have some native health checking, right? Again, it looks easy, but it's not easy. For logging, I could also say the same thing, that, oh, I have some Fluent D daemon set running on a machine that's also collecting logs and forwarding them to an Elasticsearch. And I could present this to the user. Access through a CLI, maybe, maybe a dashboard. But what really is the challenge here? It's getting just the right abstraction. And this is a really difficult task. And it's been something that we've been really trying to figure out, and did a bit of research. And we found out that to most developers, they'd love to consume a PAAS like Heroku. But then they don't really want to interact with the CLI. They don't really want to worry about Git. They don't even know how to use Git. They just want to get some code either zipped or go to an online editor and hit deploy. But then it can't be that easy, right? I mean, who can create such an abstraction? I mean, Heroku haven't. I don't think there's anyone in the market who has. So we're trying to build an open platform that can do all this. And of course, it's a very daunting task. So where do you start? OpenStack, a few servers in a data center, then those wires we're talking about in almost every country. That's insane, right? I mean, very costly, of course. But I think that it has to be done, and it's possibly maybe the only way that this particular challenge can be attacked. So the biggest pain is, of course, access to reliable local infrastructure, as you've seen, secure networking, and of course, access to talent or expertise. So I think that our needs are everyone's needs. But of course, our challenges are quite unique. And trying to build this abstraction is going to be very difficult. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And you can come talk to me. But the idea here is just to build a platform that's easy for the developer to consume, for the beginner developer. So think of your 14-year-old, 13-year-old daughter or son, and think of how they want to learn to code, maybe if they are learning to code. How would they want to deploy software? Or maybe that high school friend of yours, or niece, cousin. Yeah. So this is the problem that we're really trying to solve, and we're looking at building an open platform. And we're thinking of releasing it sometime in 6 to 8 months, but the approach we're picking is we're going with the editor approach. So we'll have an online editor where someone will be able to go to learn how to write some code, then deploy that code from there, and so some of the abstractions I've talked about we'll see in place, and the idea is that the project is going to be open source and free. So we will get a few machines, put them in a few countries, and have developers learning and creating applications for free without paying anything. So how is this possible? We recently got some machines, some free machines. Well, not really free, but almost free. And we're going to deploy a few of these machines in a few of the countries that we're in and expose this platform to the developers where we have access to. And the effort will be, this will be done by the whole team. And we hope that we can reach as many developers as possible and help everyone learn. So where is Go coming? Where is Go coming in all of this? First, we're not really trying to build Heroku. We're not trying to compete with Heroku. We're not trying to sell anything. It's free. It's open. We're just trying to help developers learn how to write better software. And where Go is coming in is we're using Go to build all this. And we have a team of about 6 developers. And we're looking at getting more people to help us. So since it's going to be an open project, and would like to have as many of you help contribute or help define the project. So we have an open doc that I can share with all of you, and we can help start a new open project. If it doesn't make sense and you think there's a better way of doing it, of course, you could come talk to me and say, this is some bullshit, just stop and let's not do this. Let's do this other thing. If you think Heroku is better, and you can talk to them, and they can give every other developer some free applications to run with, yeah, then sure. But yeah, that's it.